Hey everyone, today is February 22nd, 2020. So, I have some significant connections pointing to a possible event for tomorrow, February 23rd. Before I talk about that, though, I want to go over February 18th and the 20th. Earlier this month, I made a video about February 18th and showed you guys how the 218 is shown in the apple. Two seeds on the left half, one seed on the right half. Each half is 8-shaped. And the date that Apple lost 50% in one single day on 9/29/2000 to 2/18, you have the 322 code, the number of skull and bones that I always talk about. 1, 3, multiple 2s, you don't count the zeros. So you had that connection there, and I showed you guys some connections to movies about viruses. So I thought maybe a big announcement concerning the coronavirus might happen, um, and it just so happened that on the 18th, the big news story in the world of finance was Apple blames coronavirus for revenue miss. I think Apple took the biggest hit that day in the tech sector. So that was really interesting that happened. So then on 220, which we have that 322 connection again to Apple splitting in half, that's when the market really started. The last couple days, Thursday and Friday, stock market really started to tumble, especially the tech sector. And Apple actually opened its shares to the public at 22. So is this the start of a large crash beginning on 2/20/2020? It could be. One thing I noticed that February 20th was also 322 weeks and 2 days after the movie Wolf of Wall Street released. And it was also 223 weeks after the movie The Big Short released. Sometimes they code stuff like that in movies, but you just don't know exactly which connection. There's so many possibilities. But after something happens, it's easy to see. So then I noticed on 2/18, though, Apple closed exactly at 319 with no decimal point. I remembered that number, 319. I talked about that number, shown here in iPad Go 2. As we had the number 3 on this beetle, and we had the 1 here, eyebrow representing the 1, and the I was representing 9 because the letter I equals 9, and they already put the 9 right here. And I was talking about 913, but they do things forward and backwards, so that was 319. The Apple closed on 2/18, a day we already were looking at. So I wanted to see if anything was interesting about the number 319, and I saw that the 319th prime equals 2,113. Well, that didn't mean a lot to me, but when I took 2/18, 2020 to 12/1/2025, that's 2,113 days. Then I looked on the Hebrew calendar. It's Kislev 11. It's 9/11 on the Hebrew calendar. So that's interesting. I don't know what's going to come of that date, but I just thought I'd throw that out there. December 1st is also 11/18 on the Julian calendar, and 11/18, November 18th, is the 322nd day of the year. December 1st is the starting date also of the coronavirus, 12/1, and 1/21 is when it came to the United States. So, let's see. Yeah, one thing I previously have connected Apple's 50% crash, one day crash, to 9/17/2001. Well, that was the day that the stock market opened after 9/11 happened. See, it was closed the whole week, and it opened on a Monday, reopened, and that was 11 months and 19 days apart from Apple dropping 50% in a day. So New York, the Big Apple. So see the connection there. So now I want to talk about February 23rd. 223. I mean, just in itself is skull and bones backwards. But when you add the year, I mean, you got two more twos because I always say to look at 1, 3, and multiple twos. So this is a very interesting date just in itself for the numerology. But when I looked further, I had quite a bit of connections that I found. So one thing I think that could happen is a natural disaster. Not sure, but natural disaster does equal 223. And remember, guys, on August 11th, there's a lot of talk about August 11th, which is the 223rd day of the year. That something was going to happen with the Golden Gate Bridge. Um, it was an idea or something coded by Zachary Hubbard, and he kept talking about this date, something to do with the Temple Mount or Golden Gate Bridge. But now we arrive at 223. We have that same coding because sometimes I really truly believe that they have marker points from things that I've already seen in the past. Well, it just so happens the Golden Gate Bridge opened on 5/27/1937 to 2/23. 2020 is 30,222 days. Well, that's another skull and bones number connecting to this. Agenda 21. Well, that was published in 1993 on April 23rd. It's going to be exactly 322 months since it's been published. Um, the Oroville Dam crisis in California was 3 years, 2 months, 2 days prior to 223. The worst dam collapse in history in California will be exactly 91 years, 11 months, and 11 days. So we already have, I mean, some really significant connections when you add them all together, and it's all connecting with California. So remember the July 4th earthquake in California? Well, that's 16 months and 11 days when you reverse the date. It's a method I showed you guys several times, but if you haven't seen it, 7/4 to 223, I'll show you what I do. 7/4. So you reverse these, you put the 223 here, keep the year, 16 months and 11 days. So I do this reversal method because I've seen it play out and connect to so many different events by doing that. Well, there was another incident involving a possible dam collapse on May 22nd. That was actually a day leaving 223 days left in the year. That's when a barge broke loose in Weber Falls in Arkansas. So that was 1 year, 9 months, and 1 day. And we had an East Coast false tsunami warning and a West Coast in 2018 that were sent as text alerts to people's cell phones. The East Coast was 2 years, 2 weeks, and 3 days apart. The West Coast was 653 days apart. Well, 653 is the 119th prime. It was also 32 weeks and 2 days after The Seattle earthquake that happened, I would think it was like a 4.7, 4.8, somewhere in that range. And then we have 312 days remaining in an iPad Goat 2. We have the LC, which equals 1, 2, 3, because L equals 12, C equals 3. So also, the, the California San Francisco earthquake to the California earthquake last year on July 4th was 113 years and 11 weeks. 113, 311, it's another one of the big numbers that the elite or cult use, like just like Fukushima was on 31111. But now we have that San Francisco earthquake to 223. It's 113 years and 311 days. Another 311 code. And as I pointed out before, we have the connection to the Oroville Dam crisis. And this will be exactly 113 years, 10 months, and 11 days since the city of Oroville was incorporated. And now I wrote this connection with about the $5 bill, 11 years and 19 weeks apart, because in iPad Code 2, right here, we got the word 5 right here, representing the $5. So it's colored in like money. So now I showed you guys all these connections with California, but yet it happens to be 232 years and 22 weeks after New York became a state. And I showed you tsunami connections for the East Coast and West Coast. I don't know if something like that's going to happen, but as far as New York, I don't think this tomorrow would be the date for New York. I got 4 dates that are more significant for that, but it could be somewhere else. It could be something totally different that I'm not even talking about here, just because the significance of the date. But I think that's all I got for right now. We'll see if anything happens. Yeah, alright guys, take care. I'll talk to you next time.